We're discussing this afternoon, we have the good fortune of visiting with the Peterson brothers from Litchfield, Hastings, North Dakota. And of course, they're the relatives, the elder statesmen of the family of the Peterson heritage that Michael Andrews has been a part of and known these people for years. Raymond, of course, is grandfather to him, and Clinton and Morris. And so we'll talk about some of the things, and I guess where we start is at the beginning. I don't know what you recall from your childhood, but we'd like to have a few stories about that, or going back to what are some of the first things that you recall or you remember about your childhood and what has stuck with you over the years. Maybe in this discussion you could just, as you think of things, bring them out. I know Reynold talks about some cold winters and so on and that kind of thing, and milk bottles and so on, and that he used to feed to his younger brothers and that kind of thing. Where would you like to start with that, Reynold?
Well, I don't know. I guess I was born way back in 1916, and one of the first things that I do remember is the time that my mother had to go out and milk the cows, and she left me away with a couple of kids, and I was supposed to give them the bottle, and I got so tired of them that I tried to shut their eyes with my fingers, and the bottle turned into buttermilk. That's one of the funny ones.
Did they enjoy it? They fall sound asleep after that?
Well, I don't think they went sound asleep. Their mother probably soon came in. Anyway, I remember when I started school. Of course, I had to learn English because there was no English spoken at home. But I guess we learned because I didn't have any trouble learning.
Was there an attempt made to teach you English at home?
No, there was never any attempt to make it. Although I guess I learned some because I remember my grandfather met a man one time, and he was I was studying, and I was supposed to interpret for him, but I couldn't make it. Of course, I was only about very few years old, but we had to give up. And of course, when we went to school, we may have had a half a dozen drives to school, but otherwise we walked. And we walked across a field, and there was, in the wintertime, there was got to be a road across the field where we walked, because that's where it was. And I remember one time Paulette froze her legs, the skin on her legs was it cold?
Paulette?
Evelyn. Anyway, well, and then of course we also always had to, as soon as we got old enough, we had to go help milk cows. And we had to go get the cows out of the pasture, and we used to love to go and trap gophers. You know, there was many gophers, and then we'd have traps, and we'd have to catch gophers for the fun of it. One of the things we used to do for the...
Is there bounty on gophers at that time?
We used to take them over to the moratorium stuff.
Yes.
Living in Barnes County?
It was a small crime, but it was...
Tell us something about your hunting experiences.
Well, I guess I started hunting skunks when I was about 12 years old, I think. Yeah. I can't offhand. Have you got anything to say? You better start.
No, just keep on here.
Well, anyway.
Well, why don't you tell them about how we went to school and we had to hang our jackets outside?
Yeah. And then when we went to school, of course, you know, first we had when I first started school, we had a 2-room school. But then in about the second year that I was going to school, they rebuilt the school, and then we had school in a hall. There was what they call the Hastings Hall, I think, wasn't that name of it?
Yeah.
Yeah, we had school there. I remember going to the toilet outside, and I found the wheels were rolled all the way to the toilet and back, and I didn't get very good congratulations on that. But I got home, I got back into the schoolhouse anyway.
How about your school lunches? What did you...
School lunches?
Yeah.
A syrup pail, 2 sandwiches, and we couldn't afford apples all the time, but we had 2 sandwiches. What else did we have in
Well, and
there?
as things got better, we really thought about a treat when we bought a hot dish in a jar and put it in a big boiler in school, and then we had a hot dish meal.
So
And that was a treat.
And sometimes the bottles get too hot, they break, and that, so you had to go down. But you know, getting back to this, milking, that, wasn't too bad in the summertime, but when we'd generally come home and my mother'd make supper first. By the time that we were going out to do, milking, it was dark already, so we'd have to have that lantern, and we'd walk to the barn with that lantern, and every so often the wind would blow and out blow the lantern, so we had to go back in and relight the lantern and head for the barn again.
Oh, we really had it convenient. Yeah, really. Oh, let me see, I was gonna, something in mind, but I can't do it.
with school, of course, everyone goes to college and all of that now. What was common in those days with education? What can you say about the basics of school, what was taught and,
You had to learn to read and write. You had to learn to read and write. That's one thing you had to do.
Athletics and geography, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, we only had about 2 teachers in high school, as a
No,
rule.
that's all.
Maybe-
High school,
maybe
and
3 at the
then
very
2
most.
in the grades. I remember when Reno was a freshman in high school, when it come to settle the thrashing bills after thrash meeting, we used to call it. And I remember Reno, our dad put the figures over to Reno because he had a high school education. And that's more than Dad had. So he was supposed to be the bookkeeper.
Well, I guess our grandfather, if he signed it, he signed it with an X.
oh,
Oh, yeah, he was.
That's as much educated as he is.
okay.
But he
He
did
had
all
some
right
money in
anyhow.
his head though, otherwise.
What do you recall about your grandfather?
Reno might, the rest of us.
My grandfather died before I was born, so I don't know.
I remember that, I remember him sitting in the front room in the,
Okay.
And then
Oh, hi, Lisa.
you remember.
Can,
in
can we
front
call
room
you
and then-
back? Mike's
yeah, he would sit
videotaping
there
all
and
the
then he
uncles
would
here.
smoke a pipe. And
In the living room.
And
Okay,
he,
we'll talk to you
um,
after bed. Okay,
he had
bye-bye.
quit working then by that time, of course, he didn't live, he died in, 1923 and I wasn't even 7 years old yet. But then, he died, on the 28th of January. What he died from, I don't know, but he was my age, when I am 81 years old. And then, almost 3 years later, my grandma died. She died from a heart
No,
attack.
3 months
3
later.
months.
3 months later. They died the same year.
Yeah, died the same year. What did I say? Something?
3
years.
years.
No, she died 3 weeks later.
Yeah.
Less than 3 weeks later. He died the 28th of January and she died the 14th of February.
Wasn't it her they had laying out there in the grainer because it was the cold?
Well,
Yeah.
I used to remember hearing
The
that.
snowstorm, so that, they couldn't do anything, so they
well, he was out, to me, he was out there for a while too. But,
No, I wasn't out
So
there.
they were both your grandmother and their grandfather. What were their names?
Maria.
Olson and Maria.
Okay. You recall much, what can you tell us about the Depression of the 30s?
Oh, gee whiz.
I know I wore out my grandfather's shoes for one thing, and some of his clothes, because it was pretty tough going.
What was the nature of what caused the 30s?
Well-
The price went way down. It wasn't, the grain prices were down at 32 and 33 were pretty good crops. It was down to 15 cents about for wheat.
No, 25.
25, but
Yeah.
15 for some of the.
Yeah, yeah.
And oats wasn't any, wasn't just a couple cents, it didn't pay you even a.
But then back in 36, what did they have? The one, 10 days was up to 115, 116.
Yeah.
In 36, but.
It was
before
dry
that-
and it just.
But it really started, 29 was dry, and then you had
Yeah.
30 and 31 and 32 were fair, but there wasn't any price to it.
I still remember herding cows when we were kids. And then we got a 1/4 inch and grade, the pigeon grass came up, I thought, boy, that was sure something to herd the cows on. Got green, that's the only moisture we hardly ever had.
It was dry for how many years?
Well, 34 was dry, 36 was dry.
35 was pretty good, but 36 was dry, 37 wasn't very good. We had rust in 37. And
Rust, insects, you can
Insects.
think, and name anything you can want, and we had it.
What year was the grasshoppers were so bad? 37? What year did you and Elton go to Black Hills?
37.
37, and we could see, you could look up and sit in the shade of the house. And you could look up and you could go all this thick with grasshoppers up in the air. You can see them coming. Then pretty soon it got cool in the evening, down they'd lift. And they ate anything that was green, they'd eat.
You know, that year, I think we had a pretty decent, I was in 35, we had a pretty decent crop of durum. So we thought we should cut it on Saturday. But it was a little bit green yet. Then these grasshoppers came, and on Monday there was nothing left. They just cut the heads off.
That was only green left, was
Yeah.
was right below the heads, and then they just ate that.
Obviously, there was not much money around then. Tell us about your vacations, what did you do for vacation?
Vacation.
There was nothing like
Never heard about a
vacation.
vacation. So,
You probably went to Collison's or something maybe.
What did you do for fun?
track ropers.
On skunks, I hope.
On skunks, tell us about some of your skunk stories.
We would have some fun at school too, if we were going, when we were going to school. And boy, there was, mostly it was work. We pitched hay onto a rack and unloaded it on a rack and made a stack out of it, went out and got and pitched more hay on the rack and took it to the stack and unloaded and made more stacks out of it.
You mentioned about fun at school, Reynolds. Is there a story there to tell about the piano bench and a teacher? You wanted to share?
Oh, I don't really like to talk about that.
Well, maybe Morris, you can tell us
I
about
can't
that.
remember that one.
Clinton, do you recall?
Anyway,
No, I was a pretty good kid.
this Miss Gunderson that you see on the picture that I showed you, she was your teacher in school. Well, she was playing for us, you know, so we were singing. And so then we got some ribbons and we tied her to the piano.
Did she know it?
We tied her to the piano bench in paper ribbons. Or she thought we were
Mischievous.
that was funny.
Yeah, she recalls that as being a funny story. How about the Warriors?
Well, you get
With a number of boys, how many were there? Harvey is not here, and also
You're right.
Well, I
Leroy.
guess I'm the only one that wasn't in the service. They rejected me for something.
Well, I joined the National Guard in the fall of '38, and we got $1 a night for National Guard. That was once a week, and that paid $12 and a quarter down Valley City. So that was $12 a quarter for your activity, your tuition plus your activities. So that kind of helped me a lot as far as my. But then when I got drafted in the Army in 1940, then I did pass my physical. So then that was after my dad died too. So I thought I'd be on the farm too. So.
Did you get in after Dad died? He died the 28th of May, of October.
About 1940 wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, but I signed up in '38.
Oh, okay.
The fall of '38, and then I was in there, still going to school. Then I had to go to Meadingtown, and then I came home in spring of '39 to start farming. And then it was that summer, the spring of 1940, that we got drafted into the regular army, and that's when
How many of you went into the Army at that time in the war?
I did.
I was the only one that was.
So you
And I tried to this, but
You
Well, I
had
had
the
my,
operation.
surfer operation at the time, a hernia operation.
Raynold, you were selected into the radio technology program. How did that happen?
Oh, I'll tell you, I want to tell you something. Peterson, Putnam, Ratzlaff, Rifkin, and a couple more names. You will go to the beginning with Peterson, Putnam, Ratzlaff, Rifkin. You will go to radio school. Up to that point, the rest of them went to the South Pacific. Some of them probably never came back from there.
So because your name began with the letter P,
Yeah,
you went to radio school.
Well, that's the way it was.
The unit from LA City, National Guard, of course, they got into the 164th. They all ended up in the Pacific too. So there's, some of the guys who were with me.
Well, they went to Guadalcanal.
Yeah, they went to Guadalcanal. Quite a few of them didn't make it back even.
You've been very successful in the agriculture, farming. What's the keys to that? You've seen a lot of people come and go in the farming world. How have you survived in it, and what's been the key?
A
lot of hard work.
A lot of hard work and long
No
hours.
vacation.
So I
The only
think
sacrifice you could make it, but that's about it.
Randall tells about a story of his father having lunch out by the field and sharing that lunch with the family dog. Tell about that story, Ray.
Well, yeah, he put something in he put a toad in the sandwich and the dog swallowed the whole thing.
he was swallowing for quite a while after he still, I told one to come back
I
up.
think he did it more than once.
We weren't a mischievous bunch, you know.
The
but-
dog tried to get rid of it.
So we were mischievous, you know, where we got it from.
Over this period of time, there's been a lot of newsworthy events. What things have happened that have been most in the news that you recall, or that have been very newsworthy events during your lifetime?
I suppose the 5th of December 19,
No, yeah, fourth was
was it?
Pearl Harbor?
Pearl Harbor, yeah.
7th, isn't it?
it? Was seventh, yeah.
Was it the 7th?
Yeah.
I think so.
That was one that,
I think everybody remembered where you were when that announcement came.
yes, I remember where I was attending a gas station in Hastings and had a radio on, and all of a sudden this news came on that the Japanese had attacked Pearl Harbor.
I was in St. John's Hospital that day morning,
Maybe these smaller ones.
when I turned the radio on early Sunday morning and heard the news.
Okay.
Because I had a double hernia that I was getting repaired. That's what got me out, kept me out of the army and start with there. And I remember turning the radio on and had a little radio there. And that's when I heard the news. I don't know where you were,
I was sitting at home in the downport, I was probably listening to a baseball game or something. It was Sunday afternoon, I remember that, about the middle of the afternoon, I think it was.
What happened in the days and the weeks following that?
Well, Leroy was drafted in just about right away, I think.
Yeah.
He was
Oh,
more Hawaii.
he just had to wait, you know, see what happened.
but there got to be so many rumors
Yeah.
because people would hear a rumor and it would spread, and a lot of it wasn't
Yeah,
confirmed or
I
anything.
suppose they figured the Japanese were coming right here too, as far as that knew.
Yeah, they're stereo almost in some, like, so.
Well, of course, you know that I've been driving a car since I was 10 years old, but I had my own car when I was 13.
Can you tell us about how you got your first car?
Yes, there was some people that lived south of us had abandoned a Model T down there. And so I went and pulled it home with the horses, you know. And then there was a Model T engine standing over in one corner in the garage at home. I don't know where that came from.
Oh, remember, Reno, you put a frame in that west end of that old shop we had?
Yeah,
With a 2x4, 2x6.
Yeah.
Remember how you were gonna get that thing going, you spun and it fired one time. And you thought, boy, we got it to fire. And there's that, I don't think we ever did, what happened to
well,
it?
we put it in I took the engine out that was we took the body off, and took the engine out, and I put that engine in. And of course, then you hooked it up pulled it to the horses, and it started. And then I remember one real hot day, And I remember it was 1929 because that was the year that Elgit got married, and he was building a new building up there. And I drove the darn thing into a mud hole, and we were walking up to this new building site, you know. And he had a well, but we were pumping, we were getting so thirsty, and we were drinking this water. Pretty soon we got sick. And I swear that if they'd have planted corn back alongside that track up to that car, it would have been fancy corn. But it was 1929.
But back to, talk about the Model T and roads, never, hardly ever any gravel roads, they're all mud.
Yes.
We used to have, I think on this, this 5-mile stretch, you used to have a spot, that's where Ralph Winnie lives there, used to call the Swanson Swamp. It wasn't gravel or anything, and then every time they hit that, they'd have a hard time getting through it. And same with south of the whole place there, even south of the track, there was another slough. Every so often we would have to be pulling people out of the horses because they just sink into the mud there.
One thing I think about the old Model T, sometimes it's a little hard to start, they jack up the back.
Yeah.
With crank, is it crank a little easier?
Oh, especially when it got cold.
Well, I'll tell you what was wrong with it, that there was it was a magneto ignition on it, you know. And when you put the thing in gear, then it pushed the thing closer together, so it got better, more ignition. And
What can you tell us about the airplane?
oh, I went up and I got to fly, and when they come out with an airplane, you know, every once in a while, and then if you had $5, they would give you a ride for a few minutes. And we had
How about the one 6 Drummond and Victor Ring? What did you
when I tell you about that one, I don't remember what year that was, but
35 and bar?
Must have been before 35, isn't it?
no, I don't think so.
About in there anyway.
Well, you go ahead and tell your.
Anyway, they bought this. It was a trainer plane from World War II, I think it was anyway. Well, then they had a big engine in it, and the engine was too big for them, so there was wooden timbers, and so they cut the length off, and then they put a four-cylinder engine in it. And then we asked a man from no, he was from Daisy, to come down and fly the thing for him.
Well, Milt Larson.
Yes, he did too, but this was man first time. I don't remember his name, but he came and he did some shifting on and adjusting on some of the cables and stuff, you know. And then he took the thing up in the air and he flew a little bit and came over and his arms were all tight, you know, well, because I hauled the thing out from...
About a minute left.
hauled the thing out there, I was going to get a free ride. They were giving me a free ride. So I started walking toward the plane. It stopped. We got, it took a long, if it had taken another minute, I probably wouldn't be here.
What do you remember about your dad?
I think he had enough children for one thing,
Yeah.
that they didn't, he didn't have to do the work, he had the kids do the work.
Well, he went into the hard times, into the depression, and of course he lived through. He was through that much of the time.
Just got through, but he didn't even get through the depression.
No, he didn't.
What about your mother?
Well, he was a hard-working person. I'll tell you.
I think she milked the cows most of the time.
Yeah.
Boy, the hired men didn't. And then
Well, that wasn't supposed to be men's job at all.
No, it
I
wasn't.
don't think that's right. Maybe that's
What do you
right.
think of that for that?
What, milking the cows?
Kind of a
But,
woman's job?
and I tell you, they didn't have it for trucking. We'd done some old railroad ties or something, wherever that they discarded, we'd have to use for firewood, and of course, they got all that fuel soaked in the stove, and every so often we'd get a chimney fire.
Well, I remember we didn't have refrigerators, we used to hang our milk in the old cistern.
Yes.
To keep it
Mhm.
consistent.
Any final wrap-up comments here? Advice to the future generation?
Well, we went through the hard
The
times.
new
but-
generation's got it pretty good, that's good.
They got it too good, they don't appreciate it.
Amen.
Okay,
So,
Well- say goodbye.
Thank you very much.
You probably didn't get it all covered, but
so, we got some.
Here we are at the Andrew family farm. And here we have Dad and Grandma. Take it away, Dad.
Okay, standing here with Grandma Andrew.
Speak up.
And Mom, you want to look at Mike? This is where I spent my first 18 years of my life. Section 22, Prairie Township. On the family farm, this is a quarter of land. Dad also owned a quarter of land, which is in total 320 acres.
That's 2 quarters.
2 quarters. One is north of here a mile. But in the background, you see the barn, silo, house, and trees. All of that was built by my dad, except for the house.
The barn was built in 50.
1950, when I was 5 years old, and recall giving the driver of the truck that brought the wood out there heck because he was late, and I really ripped him one, if you recall that, Mom, that he brought the wood in. We'd been waiting all summer for the wood, and the carpenter was there and they're ready to build, and I was really ragged on him about that. He kept feeding me a line, and the more he did, the badder I got, and all of that. The shed built onto it, which is about dilapidated now. Dad and I when we built that in later years. I remember the silo being built, and I guess all this goes back almost 40, 50 years. Dad farmed it with small grain. We had a bunch of cattle. Present time, Mom is renting it to some of the neighbor people, and they are doing small grains and sunflower seeds and corn, I guess, on it at the present time. So that, no corn, I guess. The
Sunflower.
trees, Mom and Dad planted those, and have progressed quite, have grown quite a bit since that time. So that's the story of this. Mike in his young days spent quite a bit of time out here. Enjoyed the cattle and the farm. Right here.
Sorry for me again. Sorry, that just broke that. Yeah, Dad rode every one of those rafters on the farm.
He did what?
Rode the rafters.
Rode the rafters, what does that mean?
That's when they built the barn. They set the rafters on. They lay it down and then they flip it up. Tie a rope on it and flip it up. And some guy sits on it and rolled it up while they were doing it. You know, it's the nuttiest thing you ever seen. There's no way you do it now in modern days. I don't know why. I remember that term which you said rode the rafters.
And what do you do when you get them up there then? You just gotta
Nail them together.
nail them off, huh?
Nail boards off together.
Wow.
We had 6 guys here when we built them.
Remember old records?
Come here, Mike. I gotta show you something.
Okay.
Show you my first.
Oh, okay. Hang on a second. One.
Are you ready?
Oh, I'm going.
Okay. I was just showing Mike my first attempt at relaxation. Was this strap, which came from, I think, a hay rake, but I put it around the tree. It went around the tree, and it was just a small tree. The strap was much too big for the tree at the time. But I put it around here with a hook in it, and we had one from the other side, another tree just a few feet away from here. My attempt there was to create a hammock Well, we didn't have a hammock, but we did have an old, went in the house and got a blanket from the house, and we went out, Dale and I, we nailed the two boards together on the end of it, and we're gonna have this hammock. And Dale says, let me sit down in it. This looks like this would be a nice place to rest out here under the shaded tree. I said, no, I'm gonna do it first. I jumped in the hammock, our nails through the boards and the blanket ripped, and we fell down and hit our head on the ground and back to the house and tried to come up with a better idea. But,
Are out at the old family farm out in near Litchfield. Just want to give you a feel for what the buildings were like out here and just what the property is. This is where my dad grew up. My grandma and grandpa lived for many, many years, and they've since sold it, and it sort of fell into disrepair here. But spent a lot of time out here and played out here when I was a kid. So this is the view of the North Dakota countryside. My grandfather built that barn, like my dad said earlier.